1. 9 types of elderly people living miserable lives, especially the 8th type. I hope none of you fall into these categories. Over time, people follow different paths and make varied choices. However, some elderly individuals face extremely difficult and miserable lives in their twilight years, whether due to youthful decisions or limitations from their living environment and family circumstances. Their later years become heartbreakingly difficult. Below are some types of elderly people who often live the most wretched lives in their old age. Let's explore these heartbreaking realities together, hoping to draw attention and reflection from everyone. 2. Elderly people with unfilial children. If an elderly person's children are unfilial, they suffer greatly. When they fall ill, their children shirk responsibilities, showing no filial piety. They fail to care diligently for the sick, and if the elderly cannot take care of themselves, the children do not provide care, sometimes even hoping for their parents to pass away sooner. This unfilial behavior plunges the elderly into dire predicaments and exacerbates their poor health conditions. 3. Elderly people with poor health. Especially those bedridden with illness, some elderly people, despite receiving meticulous care from their children, find no comfort. Long-term illness confines them to bed, sometimes for years or even more than a decade, trapped in a state of living death with no quality of life. Ultimately, they suffer and burden their children. 4. Elderly people without pensions or savings. In their later years, if elderly individuals have no pension or savings, they constantly have to ask their children for money, which is undoubtedly uncomfortable. Each time they need money, they feel embarrassed and may face their children's disdain and frustration. 5. Elderly people without independent housing. Many think they can live with their children when they are old, but long-term cohabitation inevitably breeds conflict. In rural areas, many elderly give their houses to their children early on, ending up with no house of their own and living alternately in their children's homes. This rootless life is unpleasant and, despite seeming provision from children, often leads to very miserable lives. 6. Elderly people who never married or had children. Some elderly people chose not to have children and remain childless. When bedridden, they may not have someone to bring them a cup of tea. Even if they have money and live in a nursing home, they cannot avoid being mistreated by caregivers and bullied by other elderly people due to lacking the support of children and family. 7. Elderly people with unprosperous children. If children do not know how to earn money and have no skills, lounging at home and relying on their parents, the elderly's later years will not be happy. No matter how much money the elderly have, if their children keep draining them, eventually, the money will run out, leaving the family unable to cope with any crisis. 8. Elderly people with a lifetime of poor conduct. Some elderly people had poor character in their youth, engaging in smoking, drinking, gambling, and being abusive towards their families. Such elderly people are unlikely to be liked by anyone around them in old age, with their children and spouse distancing themselves from them. 9. Elderly people who gave all their savings to their children. Many parents, seeing their children's family struggling, will unhesitatingly empty their savings for them. Although this shows love for their children, it can also be a source of trouble. 10. Elderly people whose children live far away. Many elderly now live in rural areas while their children live in big cities, meeting only once or twice a year. Some children have settled abroad and do not return home for years. In such cases, not only can they not rely on their children for support, but even seeing them becomes difficult, leading to very tragic lives, with no one knowing if they pass away at home in extreme cases. Conclusion. The quality of life in one's twilight years depends not only on youthful planning but also on family and societal care. Elderly people who live the most miserable lives often lack economic security, suffer from poor health, and have no children nearby, leading to loneliness and helplessness. Each of us will face old age one day, and it's worth pondering how to avoid becoming one of these unfortunate elderly people. While caring for ourselves, we should also pay attention to the elderly around us, giving them more understanding and care so that every elderly person can have a warm and peaceful old age. A 73-year-old's reflection on child-free life. 73-year-old Mr. Gua, a childless elderly man, shares his story. He used to think that a successful career, money, and a partner were enough for elderly care. However, after his partner passed away 2 years ago and he moved into a nursing home, he regrettably realized the need for children. Mr. Gua's story. At 73, Mr. Gua, born in a wealthy family, was the most promising among 5 siblings. Despite excellent grades and the likelihood of college admission, he was sent to the countryside as an educated youth due to the suspension of college entrance exams. Returning to the city at 26, he registered his marriage with his wife, met during their time as educated youth. Both had dreams of attending college and decided not to have children, focusing on their exams and careers. Despite his parents' disagreement, both were admitted to the same university. Post-graduation, they found good jobs and lost the desire for children, enjoying a child-free life for nearly 40 years, traveling extensively. However, turning 65 brought unavoidable dilemmas. Self-reliance and reliance on a partner were not feasible. At 66, his wife was diagnosed with severe heart disease and passed away after 4 years of illness. Mr. Gua then moved to a nursing home, thinking it would be enjoyable, but faced challenges due to the lack of children. Discrimination between those with visiting children and those without became apparent, along with selective treatment from caregivers. The nursing home environment also felt gloomy and torturous. After 6 months, he returned home, regretting his child-free decision, realizing the necessity of children for support in old age. He now advises young people to marry and have children, as economic security alone is insufficient for elderly care. A 79-year-old woman's take on hiring a caregiver. 79-year-old Wu, a retired doctor from Dalian, shares her experience. Initially enjoying retirement with her husband, they hired a caregiver named Xiao Song for 7,000 yuan a month when his health deteriorated. Xiao Song managed the household well and provided essential assistance during emergencies. However, Wu discovered Xiao Song stealing small items and eventually a precious necklace. Despite confronting her, the theft continued, leading to her dismissal. Wu and her husband decided to live with one of their sons, offering financial support for their care. Both sons and their wives were willing to help, leading to a fulfilling life with their younger son. This experience taught Wu the importance of relying on one's own children for a comfortable old age. Thank you for reading. If you haven't subscribed, please do so to join us on our journey of growth, happiness, and aging gracefully. See you next time.